that we're one of those. But we're going to hear this afternoon from 4 presenters. First of all, we have a presentation team. And I don't know that I need to give much introduction to Dr. Frank McField, because you would not know me, but I know all about you. Because when I first came to Cayman from Australia, I needed to find out everything about everything. How did I find out? I read everything that you wrote. I heard you speak on the radio, and certainly you increased my understanding of Cayman and what I needed to do and how I needed to operate in Cayman to be effective in my work. So I thank you very much for that.
You're welcome.
Dr. Frank McField. His presentation partner is Dr. Erika Paterson. I thought she was going to be giving a separate presentation, but I'm told that they're presenting together, and that's wonderful. Their presentation is going to be about 30 minutes long, and we're going to take questions straight after each presentation this time, just to change the way things are done a little bit. And then I do need to say that they both need to leave after their presentation because they have another pressing matter to get on with. Thank you very much. I'm not going to say anything more about you. I want to give our time over to the presentation. So thank you both very much for coming this afternoon.
Well, good evening, everyone, and thanks for being here. I think this is giving people the possibility to really come in much greater numbers. But we are in the process of designing for the Cayman Islands government a unique research model that brings together a social science methodology based in participation and a storytelling methodology that will empower rather than penalize the subjects of past government studies. In short, our methodology will empower during the process of research rather than depend upon the implementation of recommendations of the studies which in the past have exacerbated the social malaises. Our intentions are to develop policy recommendations and project initiatives that in the interest of good governance and leadership will be supported by the communities and the appropriate government ministries. This collaborative research project is in its initial stages, and we welcome the opportunity this conference presents to offer our ideas for discussion and development. In order to establish the need for a new research model that addresses the issues of long-term increasing crime and violence among youth in the Cayman Islands, it is necessary to begin with a brief discussion concerning previous studies which have impacted government decisions and policies to date. In part, this is necessary because we will argue that as a result of the methodology and recommendations of these past studies, government has enacted policy which actually produce negative social impacts for the very individuals and communities most at risk of social disempowerment. Another reason it is necessary to review past policy shaping studies is to reflect on the role that government and leadership have played in exacerbating the situation by criminalizing and thereby creating a criminal subculture. This subculture has achieved dominance in certain marginalized communities where criminal elements rather than community or governmental authorities are viewed as legitimate. This unique research methodology proposes that for a power transfer to occur, citizens must either want to identify the problems and solutions to personal and community issues and must have direct access to funding and not that normally only goes to government agencies. Your first question will be, how do we combine storytelling with social science? Well, we think that storytelling is about fantasies and social science is about reality. However, there is much academic supportive evidence that demonstrates that the production of knowledge can only be scientific when it allows for the subjects of study to participate, evaluate, and enact social realities, being constructed by the researchers. Although we are suggesting the need for a new research methodology because former studies did not recognize the importance of the subjects of the study as the agents of change, we acknowledge the social usefulness of the evidence captured in these studies. As early as the 1970s, research warned the government of the day of pending social breakdown stemming in the wake of rapid economic change accompanied by equally swift demographic shifts, which resulted in substantially increased wealth and improved education for a few, and left others, a minority, in their own home. This marginalized status assisted many of the government's social control policies in directly creating greater alienation and a secure base for antisocial behavior and criminal activities. This environment exceeded a conscious revolt by the very people government policies were meant to contain. The birth of gangs in our schools and community resulting from young people being sent to reform schools in Jamaica and the U.S. signaled the urbanization of Grand Cayman and the beginning of the struggle between power and resistance. This inevitable attraction of these disenfranchised youth to the emerging youth cultures in America and Jamaica and their rejection of the more than passive Caymanian culture was met by policing and judicial actions aimed at eliminating what was considered a contamination of Caymanian ethos by the powers that be. This criminalization and policing of these borrowed cultural expressions and symbols precipitated an ongoing struggle between the youth and the agencies of social control, i.e. police, judiciary, schools, and prison. The inability or unwillingness of a morally centered leadership to understand reasons for this adoption and identification with things not Caymanian has led to many of the government social control institutions being identified as foreign, anti-Caymanian, and repressive. The police have been used to obstruct and combat the simplest forms of entertainment and expression found in what is referred to as sessions, which are happenings or events of a musical, cultural nature borrowed from the ghettos of Jamaica. This involvement of the police in the exercise of the moral judgment of a supposedly Christian and righteous society has created animosity between police and young people in marginalized communities to the extent where young people prohibit adults from assisting the police in surveillance and intelligence gathering. The culture of silence, which has been identified by previous studies, is not the result of fear, as has been suggested, but rather a direct act of resistance. The greatest threat to law and order in the Cayman Islands is the result of the unnecessary conflicts between the law enforcement institutions, the judiciary, rehabilitated institutions, and the marginalized community. Since this conflict has led to restraint on the ability of the enforcement agencies to communicate effectively and thereby gather necessary intelligence for effective policing. What is necessary to abate this situation is to reform resistance to empowerment. And our research methodology is designed to give leadership the possibility to make this radical readjustment in the way in which social reality is constructed and interpreted for the benefit of all society. In other words, the language of the professionalism which encourages dependency and control needs to be replaced by dialogue which supports neutrality and reciprocity.